talking to one of the producers, not the hosts of Morning Report, and the point that was made that seems really interesting because there's two things that are happening. One is that he is saying it's not really costing anything because these are government workers and they get that money anyway. But then the producer very cleverly says, but hang on. So the government or we the people are spending money on those salaries, and you're okay with it being spent on a job which is going nowhere. It could be getting spent on something worthwhile that's going to progress. So that's sort of the conversation, not to, spoil it too much. Have a listen.
These are fabricated figures from a trade union based on what people working for the government get paid.
Not just any trade union, Craig? Not just any trade union.
If there was no treaty principles bill, those people would still be working at the government and getting paid the same amount of money. So actually the cost is zero, or alternatively, you could say the cost is another bill that they would have otherwise been working on. I happen to think that the Treaty Principles Bill is a very worthwhile bill compared with other bills they'd be working on if they weren't doing this.
I suppose that would be the argument that a lot of people would make, is that it is time spent and money spent in this case that could be on a bill that might have a chance of success.
Exactly.
And the indication from your coalition partner.
So are you okay, Mr. Seymour, in spending this money on something that's never going to happen? It's a waste of money because it's not going through. You're still okay with that? You're still okay? Mr. Austerity, Mr. Saving money, Mr. We can't waste any money, Mr. We have to get all this money out of the government departments because of the overspend that those lunatics who were in last time did.
Is that this bill doesn't have a chance of success. Do you agree with that?
No, I think first of all we need to be clear. It's not money spent; it's time by people who are already working for the government and paid by the government. You could argue that another bill would be more successful. But
sorry to stop it again. Time by people getting paid by the government, but it's not money. What are they getting paid for their time? Are they getting paid like butternut pumpkins? What are they? Because it's not money; it's time. But what a worker does, Mr. Seymour might be aware of this. What a worker does is they give their time to something, and in return they get money. That's how small business works, Mr. Seymour. Just in case he wasn't aware.
I actually don't think you could have a bigger success than democratising conversation about our founding document when so many people feel blocked out and often shouted down and accused of all terrible kinds of things for having an opinion on their country's future. If that's all it achieves, it'll be one of the most valuable pieces of legislation that these public servants could be working on. And to say that there's suddenly an itemised cost for every policy's preparation is not a standard that I would apply. But here's a standard that could be applied if the trade unions are worried about the cost of preparing bills.
Are you prepared, Craig, for some advice from Mr. Seymour? I'm just saying, you're prepared?
Delighted.
Okay, here we go.
Well, how about the fair pay agreements, which were always going to be shot down, have been removed? Are they complaining how much it cost to run through fair pay agreements, because that was a hell of a lot more money than anything on the Treaty Principles Bill, and that bill is no longer law. They don't apply that standard to causes they believe in, and I don't think that it's honest of them to apply that standard.
So in that case, and setting that standard, do you think it was a waste of time for them to be pursuing that?
I think that the Council of the Trade Unions are finding that they don't have much to do. Because
Seymour doesn't realise yet he's walked into a trap. He doesn't realise yet. And he goes past it, and then he actually wants to come back and say, why did you ask me that? And the point gets made, because if you're saying that's a waste of money, then so is this. So it's a very good job done by this producer.
Because their ideas are out of favour.
But was it a waste of time for them to pursue that?
Well, I think it absolutely was a waste of time, because they should
So
be
if you're comparing it to that, why isn't this a waste of time?
Well, I think you're wasting your time trying to learn logic, mate.
Yeah.
You talk about
we'll just leave it there, because he does come out. He then has to go, well, why did you? Let's visit that again. Why did you ask me that? He tries to justify it, but basically he's saying this is not a waste of money, even though it's not going to go through. But this other policy that the CTU or the trade unions want to support was a waste of money because it wasn't going to go through. Craig, love to hear your response.
I mean, it's a wonderful piece of sort of political sophistry, but I mean, the reality is that this is a government that is killing its own bill. When the Fair Pay Agreements Bill was written, the government supported it through all readings in the House. It was supported to being signed off by the Governor General, and it was enacted as a piece of legislation. It took another piece of legislation to remove it. We have a piece of legislation in front of us which the government does not support, which has been written by the government. It is an act of peculiar self-harm. There are there are very rare.
Sorry to interrupt. It almost sounds like we should contact someone, because that form of self-harm, you actually start to get concerned about, about their mental health, because, when a teenager and stuff self-harms, it's a really serious situation, and you get, mental health people involved. So that sounds like that kind of level of self-harm, Craig.
Well, it's almost a case of sort of schizophrenia in terms of, because David's talking about, or Mr. Seymour rather, is talking about this is a bill which the government is working on, which government workers are working on, but which at the same time the government, the parties of government, are telling us will not pass.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when the Fair Pay Agreements Bill was written, it was designed to support the lives of thousands, if not millions, of low-paid workers across the country. This is a bill designed to appease one person in the House who doesn't have the support of every other party in the House in delivering that bill. And he's wasting $4 million of taxpayers' money at a very minimum in the process.